Welcome to the Fairmede Hilltop Neighborhood Council meeting. It's still COVID. We ask that you wear a mask if you have one, but COVID is starting to lift. So tonight we have our city manager, and she's going to say a few words, and then we have Ben Therriault, our Richmond Police Department's union president. And so before we get started, I was going to have our beat officer come up and if he could talk about what's been going on in our neighborhoods in this area. If you don't mind coming up and saying a few words. Put it on the stand that you're really tall.
Thank you. No problem. Hi, I'm Officer Galloway. I've been with Richmond in my 6th year now. Came from Oakland, did 2 years there, and I'm currently you guys' beat officer. The crimes that I've seen as far as that's been ramping up is property crimes. Also domestic violence has been ramping up a lot, as well as just assault like with deadly weapons.
Can we get you to raise the mic up a little bit?
Guys hear me?
Yes.
All right. Yeah. So that's been some of the things that I've been seeing in the Hilltop area. I mean, as far as like crimes that's been ramping up. Do anybody have any questions or anything, or any concerns or anything? Yes.
I noticed that the Hilltop Park, there's a lot more like homeless looking type of individuals there during the day. I know before they were setting up tents along the back perimeter along that fence. Is the Richmond PD aware of that?
I have not been made aware of that. And what I can do, we can exchange phone numbers, and I can personally kind of see if I can take care of that and see like whose jurisdiction it is. Okay. Any other questions or concerns or anything as far as in the beat?
Can everybody hear?
I guess.
Any questions from the
I
area?
want to look at that.
Yeah.
Positive. Last time I was in the meeting here, they actually keep us here. And I expressed the concern about a house on Barber, because I live on Barber, and it's a menace. And also a car on Green that been here forever. So he said to take care of it, he has. So the house was built, and the car is gone.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Absolutely perfect. And again, I'll pass out my number so that everyone here can have my numbers in case, my personal number, so that, you know, if you want to get in contact with me, if anything I can take care of, just let me know. Within reason. I mean, because staffing is a little shaky right now, so I'm not going to promise anything, but however, I will do my best to make sure that you guys know that. Any other questions or anything? Any questions for me? Any questions I can ask? No problem.
Thank you. Well, thank you, officer, for coming by, and
Stick around.
sounds good. He's going to stick around if there's any other questions. We're still waiting for Ben to come in, so before Ben shows up, maybe we can have our city manager come up and introduce herself. I think it's the 3rd or 4th in 2 years.
That's okay, I've been here for a long time.
Yeah, she has, and we want to keep her as well. So.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Hi, I'm Shasa, Interim City Manager. Thank you for having me this evening. I'm just here primarily to introduce myself and make sure that you all know that if you have any questions or concerns about anything that's happening in the city, you can take down this number, 510. I'll say it 3 times. 620-6512. Again, 510-620-6512. And we are happy to assist you. One more time, 510-620-6512. Am I doing okay, John? Okay. So I have been with the city of Richmond for a number of years. The last time I was here was at the beginning of COVID, and when I was serving in the capacity of deputy city manager. I worked for Bill Lindsay for a number of years as his administrative chief and as the community economic development director. And so I just want you all to know that it's been a difficult time during COVID for everyone, you know, personally and professionally, as well as, you know, with our families. And I want you to know that city staff are doing the best they can to be responsive. We do have very high vacancy rate at this time, just like many other areas of the economy. We've had a lot of people who are retiring, people who are taking positions in other municipalities, and so we are actively recruiting. So if you yourself or family members, or you have a young person in your household who needs to get a job, please know that we're hiring, and you can send them on down to 330 25th Street to our Employment and Training Department. They are open. And also at 450 Civic Center Plaza, the City Hall, people can get applications there as well as complete things online. So we're definitely hiring in all departments, from public works to the housing authority to police and fire, you name it, there are open positions. So we welcome the opportunity to hire locally and also for local procurement. So if you have a small business, we have a bids online system. You can go to the finance department website and register for bids online, and there's opportunities to contract locally with the city. Also, I understand that our community development director, Lena Velasco, has been in touch with some of the residents, but there is a specific plan process that will be kicking off soon. That's a planning process for residents to help guide what the Hilltop Mall, what that site can look like. As you all are all aware, Prologis did buy the site, but they have made a commitment to work with city staff and go through a collaborative planning process to help inform the land uses in that area. And so those are kind of the big updates. We just finished our mid-year budget, and we have been identified by the state. We will be having a state audit. We anticipate that's going to get kicked off pretty soon. Here in April, and then that will be a process that we undergo with the state. We have, our financials are looking okay. We're not sure how the Measure U revenue is going to actually come in, so that's one of the big unknowns is how that's going to all pan out, because it is new for businesses, and so we do have a lot of information that we still have to gather to have accurate projections. But so far so good. We have a lot of new team members that have joined the city, and so in addition to myself here, Gabino Arredondo, who's been in the city manager's office for a long time, who's a project manager, is also here in case you all have questions. Gabino, if you want to identify yourself. And so if you have any questions, he can also provide assistance as well as myself. And with that, I will turn it over to questions.
Oh, that's okay. I don't need a mic. Thank you. There's been a lot of question about when is the city going to return back to in-person meetings, or at the very least a hybrid meeting?
That's a really good question, and I know that people don't like this answer. I'm not sure. And so ultimately, the council will consider that in partnership with the city clerk and the city attorney. But the way Richmond is structured, I personally, as well as the city clerk and the city attorney, we all report to the city council, and so they provide the policy direction regarding those matters. Right now, the state allows meetings to continue online, and so that's what's been taking place.
Yeah, it's a little difficult to ask questions when you don't have a Zoom account, or you can't get on Zoom, but you can't ask questions on KCRTV or YouTube. So that's why there's an urgency to get them in-person meetings.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. I can certainly let the council know that feedback that we received this evening. Do you want to facilitate, or do you want me to call people?
Yeah, no, go for it.
Okay, who had their raised hand first?
Yeah, I have a question. You were just saying that the city is hiring
Yes.
different departments, all departments, or what?
Yes, there's about, as of last Thursday, there were 127 vacancies.
So when did these applications or openings start?
Some of them are ongoing, and some of them have different recruitments depending on the type of position.
So here's what's confusing me, because from time to time, you call with a complaint. Code enforcement or some department, they're telling you that they've cut back staff, doing this, people getting laid off. So now you're saying they're hiring, and so if you're hiring, what's the deal and cutting back staff. Because when you report things that you see out around the community, whether it's the parkway, trash, litter and stuff, well, we're understaffed, we don't have enough people, the city is not hiring. So what's the deal? Really, all these vacancies?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So at the beginning of COVID, that most municipalities, because we haven't lived through a pandemic before, we're not sure how the financial situation was going to play out. Everybody was planning for for things to really essentially fall apart financially, right? People were really scared, they were very nervous, and so people weren't sure how commerce if it was going to continue to move or how to measure things. And so at that time, under the leadership of the previous city manager, the council did freeze 60 positions, and they were doing that to try to be thoughtful and not overextend ourselves. I still think that we have 127 vacancies. I don't know that we will fill all 127 vacant positions tomorrow. We have to, try to hire people where people submit applications and we have good candidates. But until revenue is more solidified, right? Even now, because of the war and because of interest rates increasing, we all feel a lot of instability, or at least I would say I do, right? We don't know, the Federal Reserve saying they're going to raise interest rates, and then that can have impacts on the economy. So I think what we're trying to do is I'm trying to move back to the approach that I was more familiar with under Bill Lindsay, where we try to keep things steady. So we stop having these big shifts of starting and stopping and kind of gradually ramp up and keep things smooth. Because then residents know what to expect. So if you call code enforcement, you expect somebody to come out, right? And it isn't an acceptable answer if you call and you say you want service, that if someone says, oh, we just don't have staff. We do have staff. We might not have as many as we would like to have, but it's still my expectation that if a resident calls with a complaint, that city staff will work to address it. Now the problem we have is some folks want to call, some folks want to email, and some folks want to use the app. And so then it's the balancing act, like, okay, well, who put their inquiry in first, right? Somebody could have put something in the app where you take a picture with your phone and you say, there's some unhoused people over here on the Prolitis property, and they enter it, so then abatement goes out and cleans it up. But you might not know that, and you've also called, right?
Whenever I call, I do get results because I didn't know the person who's in charge of code enforcement. But there are
So you know Eva?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, wonderful. And is she being responsive?
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah, she is.
She should run for mayor. But she does her job.
Yes, she does.
There's a couple of people that really do great jobs to work within the city.
Yes.
So I make a point of when these people do what you ask them to do, even though they get paid, I do call back to thank them for what they do. But there's so much in the city, and long before COVID and all this other stuff, the city is filthy, it's dirty. That parkway put in, if nothing else, the city does around the perimeter of the city of Richmond, because so much traffic and commuting goes along that parkway should be pristine.
I agree.
Down on that lower end towards Woodrick, near the Dotson Marsh, it's a dumping ground. It's filthy down there, all along going into park. I don't understand. What is this city doing with the money? We've had problems for years with funding and no money. I don't get it. We're not progressing. The city is digressing. Something's got to change. You can't generate any revenue. You can't bring businesses in. The mall we lost that years ago, that shouldn't have happened. All the other communities around us are thriving. We're stuck. And I've said it time again, this logo around the city of pride and purpose, I'm looking. Where's the pride and what is the purpose?
So, we have a question over here.
Yes.
So how many new businesses are in here now, starting out? What new businesses have come into Richmond in the last 2 years?
The primary business growth has been in the e-commerce distribution space. So there's been a number of businesses that are in the distribution sector that have expanded. And also, Richmond is fortunate that we do have a diverse economy, and we do, like this year, there is significant revenue that is coming in. And so I think that your points around making sure the parkway is cleaned up, I absolutely agree with you. And I think at our next meeting, we should ask our Public Works Director, Joe Leach, to come. He's our new Public Works Director, and I think that it would be helpful for him to hear the feedback that you're providing, because I think it's reasonable that the community should have high expectations around how the city looks. So we have started a new campaign, I Heart Richmond, where we're partnering with all the neighborhood councils. And when you have your dumpster days, that we do neighborhood cleanup around it. And so if you all are interested in, when you have your neighborhood cleanup, that's usually coordinated with Stephanie and Hugo in abatement. Stephanie who's in community services, and Hugo who leads the abatement team. We'd be happy to help organize cleanup events and to try to get things looking better.
I've got two questions for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Piggyback on your comment about all the vacancies that we've got. When you introduced yourself, you pointed out you were interim city manager.
Yeah.
We have a vacancy there. Maybe you can expand on where we stand on coming up with a permanent city manager. Do we have an international headhunting search looking for it, or are they talking directly just to you?
I think it's appropriate for me to say that I think the conversations with the council have been positive. I've been trying to be responsive to the needs of the community, like coming here and being in person and meeting with people. I think that's a lot of what we heard from residents before, is that they were concerned that the former city manager wasn't getting out and conversing with people or engaging with the staff and going to the courtyard or the rec yard and making, like I've met with Costco and different businesses and the auto dealerships. So I'm trying to do the best that I can. I know that this is not an easy situation, and so I have let the city council know that I am interested in a permanent position. And I think so far that they think things are going well, so I'm hopeful that I'll be the permanent city manager. And I'm committed to working with the community in a collaborative way to address your concerns. And I think that everyone has a right to have high expectations, and we do need to do better.
You got my support if it means anything. My second question is, this is in my own neighborhood. I don't live in this area, but I can't imagine that I'm the only person that's got a situation like this. Across the street from me, about a year and a half ago, one of my neighbors passed away. Well, of course, almost immediately, as soon as they got the body out of his house, the homeless moved in there to squat. I was impressed. They even bought a brand new refrigerator, had it delivered in a cardboard box. You don't usually have that with squatters. And they ended up getting kicked out, boarded up all the windows and doors, but just like locks only keep honest people out. They keep breaking in. But it's been a year and a half now. Just what kind of mechanisms do we have to find out who owns the property, to try to find out what can be done? Because the longer it stays vacant, the more of a blight on our community it becomes. So we don't need all these boards on there with big signs, keep out, this is not a good place to be. But I'm not sure that anybody knows who actually owns this place to try to do something about it.
Yes, for that situation, I think I know people are like, oh, the city has a program for everything. Actually, for that one, we do. So Jim Becker with the Richmond Community Foundation has a program where they get properties that are in receivership, and then they work with the county and deal with the liens and acquire it and then sell it back to people. And so if you can give me the address, I'll ask Jim to check into it and see if it fits in their criteria, because we do have a formal partnership with them to do that. And that's the Richmond Community Foundation. Jim Becker is the executive director, and that's a program that's been very successful at dealing with these kinds of houses where unfortunately sometimes people pass away, and if the family can't, sort of deal with the complexities around the ownership and, getting that straightened out, then the Richmond Community Foundation will come in and try to work with the county to acquire it.
In a case like this, there may not even be a family that it was left to.
Right, so then that's the case where they do all the proper noticing, and then it usually goes through a program called the receivership program, and then they do all the public noticing so that it's acquired in a proper manner.
I mean, at very least, I know property taxes haven't been paid for a year and a half.
Right.
Uh,
So they work to cure those things, and then they bring a contractor in and remodel it and sell it to a first-time home buyer with Richmond Neighborhood Housing Corporation, or CHDC, the other nonprofit in Richmond that works on housing.
Thank you.
Sometimes they make it hard because when they're squatters, and I'm trying to get my AT&T up on trees, you know, their poles, I can't get to it because of the neighbors. You have to ask their permission to do it. And I have a very difficult time to upgrade my AT&T because I can't get to the pole. They cannot get to the pole. All over this area, it's really hard to have Wi-Fi, good Wi-Fi, because I use Zoom and because I do puppets. So I need something because that's my, you know, what I do. So it's hard for me to get, you know, and the trees, you know, they're gonna cut down those trees, but they're too tall, and they're not good for the phone. So I can't have a regular phone anymore because of the tree being too tall.
So, did you have a question?
Yeah, I had a question. Somebody had asked about businesses, how many businesses moved in, that sort of thing. What do you feel are the ramifications of Measure U on our current businesses that are here? And also, you know, is that a negative towards some businesses coming in?
I think that's a really good question. I have asked staff to look at what the comparable business tax situations look like. And I think the challenge that we have in Richmond is that we have, we're fortunate that we have a diverse economy, but we're like a smaller city, like a town, but we have some of the challenges like in Oakland or San Francisco, but we don't have that level of revenue. And so I think it's a difficult balancing act where residents want to have a high level of service, right? But our businesses haven't, historically, the tax situation hasn't been as progressive. So I think we're not sure how it's gonna land and how it's gonna work out. A number of the businesses do have the benefit of Prop 13, so they've been here for a long time, and so their property values do reflect that. But I'm not sure how it's gonna impact things moving forward. I think that a number of cities are facing similar situations like Richmond, where they don't have the revenue to support what residents want. And so I think coming up in November, we'll see what some of the surrounding areas start to do in terms of trying to raise revenue to deal with, you know, the expectations of the community. But I think it's very early to tell. And the primary reason why we can't give a definitive answer is because we don't actually have the gross receipts data. So that's been part of the exercise, is that there were preliminary estimates for the revenue, but it's not based on precisely what the gross receipts are for the businesses. So city staff has asked for that information, there's been mailings, but we haven't gotten it all in. The compliance rate isn't extremely high, and so the businesses have a couple more months to essentially make their payments before there's an additional penalty and fees assessed. And so I think we'll know better in July. I think by July, we'll have a sense of, you know, how things are shaking out, and if businesses are going to want to stay, or if they think that it's so, it's too high to make it worthwhile. But my assumption would be that Richmond is a great location. It's, you know, it's in a premier location. You have access to Marin, you have access to Oakland, easy access to Sacramento. So that's why all these businesses in the logistics sector are moving here, because of the location. So I'm cautiously optimistic that we're going to find ways to partner with the business community, and we have a good, diverse workforce. That's also something that people look for, is that we have a diverse housing stock. So, you know, you can have anybody from like a working class family to middle class to upper income can all find a home in Richmond. And I think that's what makes it desirable for businesses to want to locate here. We don't have a lot of vacancies except for in the retail area, and everybody has vacancies in retail except for Walnut Creek and Concord around us. Even Emeryville has vacancies now. So I'm cautiously optimistic that we're going to turn the corner and that things will continue to get better.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, I don't want to waste too much of your time on this, but I was involved with several other neighborhood councils, and we created maps for the redistricting issue, and we thought they were the most fair and just maps, of course, but apparently the city council, basically the RTA city council, didn't agree with that, so they voted Tuesday. Can you tell us the ramifications of that vote, and when will those maps be put in place if they're not taken to court?
Right, our city clerk is the expert on this process. So again, this is one that's not my lane per se, but I'll try to give an overview. So the way that it works is the city clerk has to transmit the map to the county. And so I anticipate that sometime in the first 2 weeks of April, there'll be another public hearing. And because the map is now officially published, that the council selected, and then that map, as I understand it, will be given to the county clerk, and then that's how the district lines will be drawn. That doesn't mean that other things may not happen, but that's the process thus far. And ultimately, the way the redistricting works currently is that the council does vote on the map, and then the clerk transmits it to the county.
We're coming up on festival season, Cinco de Mayo, Juneteenth. Can you give us an update? Are we going to have one this year for both of those? I know it's a little bit early for 4th of July and for National Night Out, but how about the other two?
Those are really good questions. So we had some preliminary discussions when we thought things were headed where you still had to, like if you had, for example, over 10,000 people, then you still had to check for vaccine status. So I think it's going to be a partnership between, the city, including police and fire, public works, and the event organizers to decide how they want to proceed. Usually it depends on what the scale of the event is now with COVID in terms of whether, people think it's prudent to have it or not. And so my understanding is that we've had some initial discussions, but I don't know that we had a final conclusion on the answer. But there have been discussions about, okay, if we have it, what kind of precautions would need to be in place and so forth. So I think we should try to get something out this month to indicate how it's going to go for sure. I also think that it's also up to the event sponsors, right? Like the city contributes time and a little bit of money, but usually they're separate nonprofit groups that organize them. So it also depends on their comfort.
Well,
So I think there's going to be, for example, like I would anticipate there would still be the parade component, but maybe, I don't know about the festival. And I don't know, Gabino, do you have updated information?
Yeah, the last time I spoke with the 23rd Street merchants and also the parade organizers, they said that they're not moving forward on it because they started planning it already since December and January from my communication with them. As far as Juneteenth and the other events, I think those are still a possibility.
Yeah, because one is more like the Juneteenth Festival is usually a parade, and then it kind of concludes, and then also the fireworks, I think they're trying to plan for the fireworks, I believe. When Rajana last spoke, I heard they were thinking about it, but I don't think I've asked fire and police and recreation to come together and make a recommendation, and so there hasn't been an absolute final decision. I want us to be flexible. Like, I feel like COVID, like you have a choice, right? Like you right now, I think it's okay, right? You don't have on a mask. I have a choice. I have on my KN95 because I'm in City Hall and I have a 9-year-old, right? And so I feel like I was at her school today for parent-teacher conference, and so, everybody gets to make personal choices. And so what's important to me as a city is that we allow people to make personal choices. So if folks want to have festivals, we'll do our best to accommodate it. If they want to have parades, we'll do our best to accommodate it. But at the same time, the event organizers have to do the due diligence and make sure they're prepared to educate the public around the requirements. And sometimes people don't want to be in the business of checking these vaccine cards because that's a lot of work, to have an event and check all the vaccine cards. So right now we're just trying to be flexible and take it one day at a time and make sure that we're letting people make their own choices. Yes?
Now, I've been walking and, around the area, and I always think, and I think we should have a community outreach to get to know our neighbors. And to get to know them means all faiths of different faiths getting together and getting to know the people. This is what a community is. And this is how we reach out. And like maybe hospitals, medical, getting them blood pressure, free blood pressure, how the kids, it's not the same anymore.
Yeah,
It used to be.
Yeah, I know Lifelong Community Center, Lifelong Brookside, they're one of our good community partners that really help a lot with that. So if you guys would like to have more information about the services they provide, I'd be happy to ask them to come to another neighborhood council meeting, but they provide a lot of information because we do have a large population that what we call is residually uninsured. So someone may have a job, but they may or may not always have health insurance. And so Lifelong Community Clinic is here to help make sure all residents, if they need testing like you're saying, for either COVID or blood pressure or diabetes, that they've been a really great partner.
Yep, before we let you go, I wanted to say that Pastor Lauren and myself, we've been talking about having another career fair, possibly, and maybe in June. And since you mentioned that city has so many openings, would you be interested in setting up a booth or table here?
Sure, absolutely. And we can also ask Tamara Walker. She's our new Deputy Director of Community Services for Employment and Training. She grew up here in Richmond, started at Employment and Training with the Youth Build program, helped set that up at the very early stage of her career. She went to Oakland, and now she's back leading that department. So I'm sure every time I send her anything, like I want to make sure that, for example, folks in our Public Works Department, if they're a utility worker and they want to become a trades worker or a different type of worker, that they can get training and we can help them matriculate professionally. And she's been very open to those kind of ideas, so I'm sure she'd be happy to participate. And we can ask our HR department to participate too.
Yeah, it went really well the last time we had it, which was right before COVID, so
Yeah, we would be happy to do that.
that would be great.
Well, are there any more questions? Well, thank you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate your time.
So we're still waiting for Ben Therriault to show up. He's running for sheriff, so I imagine he's campaigning as we speak.
I was going to say, I can pretend to be Ben, just kidding. No, or the gentleman in the back.
So,
You're too skinny.
I feel like I'm getting fluffy.
Right
I know we have another candidate for county supervisor in the audience, Hughley Barnett, one of our home community members, so that's good. And I was just wondering if the officer has any more updates. Do you have any more updates you'd like to provide while we're waiting for Ben? If we wait for Ben? No?
You want me to do the report?
Yeah,
Okay.
that'd be great. This is our treasurer, Dolores, and Dolores would like to do our treasury report. So we often try and raise money for community events and what have you.
I'm gonna leave my number in the front, if you guys wanna take a call, okay? You guys have a good one, nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Okay.
So Dolores is the one with the checkbook, so here she goes.
Okay. I'm Dolores Goday. Okay, so we'll start with the previous balance. As of December 31st, 2021,
Speak into the microphone.
it was $6,107.10. This year so far, we have collected $375 in dues. The expense we had was $40, and it was for the RNCC 2022 dues. And our balance, ending balance as of our March 15th, 2022 statement is $6,442.10. That's it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. We're still waiting. So we'll give them a few more minutes. But in the meantime, as I said, we did our redistricting effort with a bunch of neighborhood councils. The maps were turned down, so it'll be interesting to see where the boundaries go and the maps that the city council chose actually get challenged. And then we've created a group of other neighborhood councils, and the group is involved with pro-logis in Hilltop Mall and the efforts that they're going to put forth in whatever they're going to bring to us. And then they're revitalizing the whole Hilltop Mall area. The Chevy's building was just bought. It's supposed to be turned into a 4-story hotel. The Social Security building up here was also just bought out. We don't know what that's going to be. And Ben just texted me that he's walking up. So, yeah, so there's a lot of things moving. And if you guys get a chance, it would really be good for you to start watching the city council meetings. Got a question in that? She asked if they're still housing the homeless at the Marriott, and yes, they are. And yeah, the county is actually doing that, and yes, they are. And there's a date that's been set a few times for transitioning them out of there, but it hasn't happened, so we don't know if that's going to happen. So for now, it's going to be a motel for the homeless, so, or the houseless. So we can live with that. They've been pretty good neighbors up to this point. But there is a lot of money going towards the homeless as we speak in the city. A lot of nonprofits are popping up, what have you.
Did you say the Chevy's lot?
Yes, the Chevy's lot was so.
So somebody's going to put a hotel there?
That's what we were told by the
Right
city.
across from the homeless Marriott?
That's what we were told by the city. So, well, it looks like the Richmond police officers union president has shown up, and he's also a task force member. He's also running for county sheriff. So if you want to talk to him about anything sheriff related or his campaign, you're more than welcome to after the meeting outside, and I can introduce Therriault.
Cleaned up these days, Ardo. Yeah. Can everybody hear me? Or did I need the, yeah?
Use the microphone.
You need my My name is Ben Therriault. I'm the president of the Police Officers Association here in Richmond. I've been a police officer here since 13 plus years. I used to live here in Richmond. I just moved too long ago, and I live down in Martinez. But yeah, I'm here to talk about your concerns tonight amongst for our police department. Obviously, I'm not speaking on behalf of the police department, but I can always speak on behalf of the officers and sergeants who do the work, like Officer Galloway, who was in here earlier tonight. And I'm also a member of the Richmond Task Force for reimagining public safety. Don Gosney.
Is the Richmond Police Department being given directives about which crimes to turn a blind eye to because they're not important enough, or that because they're the people running the city are decided that these are not true crimes?
No, I would not say that's not happening. We are, the fact of the matter is we are understaffed for calls that we receive. What people are doing, in my opinion, is probably not calling us for a lot of low-end type of crimes. That's what I see, or my conversations with people on the street. That is, people are like, well, I don't want to bother you with this, it's small and it's medium. And it's not, because it's still something that happened to them, whether it's some property that was taken, whatever, what have you. It still means something to the people who lost it. But a lot of people feel they've kind of thrown their hands up as it's not something that we're going to, investigate, because that's the actual issue, is that it's not that we won't respond. We will. It might be delayed for other things, but the investigation of certain things like property crimes with no suspect, that's not happening. So if something gets stolen, if your car gets stolen, they're not going to do any investigative work. The prints, the involved, there's no suspect, that's pretty much it. The report is written, and that's that. People, same thing, a lot of people, we've tried to, at least for the tracking purposes of knowing what's happening in geographical areas of the city, have tried to take online reporting systems and push those out for people to use at least, so they need for insurance report, et cetera. But that's kind of hit or miss. And not everybody has access to the internet the same way everyone does, but we try that as well. But that's the problem, is really the investigative part of the back end. That's what's not happening. We have reduced our investigative units drastically to staff patrol because we have large numbers of vacancies within the police department. And we have a lot of people who are injured as well. This is a hard job. It's not a glamorous job, and it's sometimes a physical job. And unfortunately, we have several people who are on injury leave as well.
Just to follow up on that, as you pointed out, you're on one of the task force members on the Reimagining Public Safety Community Task Force, as am I. And we see that things are being discussed in those meetings and then being passed on to the city council, that the police should not be allowed to pull certain people over to look at things, should not have the right to go through a person's car, even if they see something on the front seat. If they see a gun on the front seat, they say, well, you need the driver's permission to actually look in the car on things. We're seeing, again, a number of directives like that, but I'm just wondering, is this actually being passed down to the police department?
I don't think there's anything actual like that. Looking at the city manager, but
I'm sorry, I'm emailing about Parkway.
But no, I don't think nothing like that has been passed down yet. It's still, I think, what I would call in the discussion mode. But I think there's a lot of things that are lost between what some folks want to do. In the scenario you described, if I saw a gun on a seat, we don't need to ask permission for that. I think what you're talking about is search consent forms, things like that. And then the other thing would be like not stopping people for low traffic offenses. Well, you would be surprised by the number of guns I personally have gotten off the street, or people who have warrants, etc., who were stopped just because they didn't pay their registration. It may sound surprising, but those little things like that are actually, you just stop people, contact folks. That's what they're talking about in those meetings. It's things like that. I think they want to do away with or make it the lowest priority. But the problem is, what about everybody who does what they're supposed to do? There's all these things to balance out. So.
If I can follow up once again, if the state has a law against something, can the city council legally tell you to ignore that as a crime?
I think they can make it a low priority. I think that's something that they can say, hey, we want this to make it a low priority. I don't know if you can absolutely attach a law. How are you?
Very good to see you, sir.
Too. I think you can make it a low priority. I don't know if you can completely abolish it. I don't know if you can actually say not to investigate, or we have an obligation as law enforcement officers and the laws of the state of California. But there are ways that I think the council can make things change priorities. They could probably do that. Yes, sir.
Yeah, we know that our progressive city council is really not, and the task force is really not in favor of license plate readers, and have not been for quite some time. They feel that's a violation of people's rights, and ICE might use it. First of all, is there any truth to that? And then what is RPD's take on possibly using cameras, red light cameras?
Well, again, I'm not here to give the police department's view on something. I can give the police officers' view on something. And license plate readers, as far as we're concerned, are a benefit to the city for investigative purposes. There are ways and there are contracts that could be held that will keep ICE out of collecting any of that data, which I think is a concern for folks, and understandably so, since we have a large immigrant community. But the bottom line is we need some of these investigative tools to help solve crimes. When a car that drives up and shoots a bunch of people, drives away, and there's no witnesses, or no one wants to talk to the police, or maybe no one saw anything, those types of tools, which San Pablo, which is a large community of immigrants, has a ton of, they're throughout the entire city. They're of immense value to us solving crimes and connecting people who are involved in these horrific crimes. And so and really ultimately that brings justice to the people who are victims. But quite frankly, in our majority minority city here, sometimes are also immigrants as well. So that doesn't make any sense from as far as the costs are concerned. We think it's a valuable tool. It was very disappointing when we lost that tool, but we understand the concerns, but there's ways to bring it back without having that information sent to ICE. We understand and respect those concerns, but we think the overall arching value of solving crimes and giving justice for people, for families, especially people who are robbed, carjacked, sometimes, God forbid, murdered, that's important, and that should be a priority, in our opinion, to the city council. Yes, ma'am.
And then when they arrest them, they can send right back and do it again.
That's a different, it's beyond my control. That's a different area. You have to take that up with the county and the district attorney and all that. But at least we could make arrests and we could hold people accountable.
But it's really hard for you guys to deal, because you're so overwhelmed, and you don't have that much staff, because they're defunding the police now. And so the money, that's what, and you're not being respected. You're really not being respected by people.
It is very difficult. The past few years with the pandemic and everything else it is very difficult, and there's probably never been a more difficult time to be a police officer.
And they're being more distressed. Some of the police officers turn out having to get leave because some of them are even trying to commit suicide because they're so overwhelmed now. And I know one. That's what I'm saying about that. And so it's hard for the family.
It is, mental health and law enforcement is something that we work on. It's somewhat of a stigma and a cultural thing that we are trying to work on internally. That we need to make changes in our outlook on how we approach, how police officers handle mental health, myself included. So that's something that's definitely in our minds and we're working towards, but we have a long way to go. All right.
So I was just curious, on your campaign trails throughout the county, have you seen anything that Richmond could benefit from that other cities might have? As far as from a police standpoint or a policing standpoint, or is community policing a benefit? Or
I mean, I think community policing has always been a benefit, and I think we do a good job of it here, but again, it's about resources. And then just in general, one of the reasons that so many people left this police department is, quite frankly, they did not feel supported by the city council. That's just the facts, Jack. I mean, many people left. There are many opportunities elsewhere. You can get a police. When I started law enforcement, was in the recession. I competed against about 500 other people, and was for like 4 or 5 jobs. And I had an immaculate background, ex-military, and all this and that, whatever. It was very difficult. Now, when we try to hire people, we might get, 20 people show up. So that's the problem, because you get what you pay for on one end, and then also if there's not a lot of interest in doing this job, and sometimes even less interest in doing it here, and that's unfortunate, because this is a great city with good people in it who need good law enforcement more than other places within the county. I mean, other places in the county have it well, in my opinion, are too, and they're doing all right. This place needs all the services that it can get. They deserve it. But, it doesn't help when political figures in the city, quite frankly, are not supportive of what their law enforcement does. During promotional ceremonies and, events, this is even before the pandemic, they don't show up to anything. Now, I mean, I don't know if it's because they don't care. I have no idea. I can't read their minds. But the kind of lack of engagement or kind of cognitive dissonance that comes with that doesn't help. And a lot of people left because they felt like they weren't supported. They were constantly under political attack, and so they decided to walk with their feet. Sure.
Yeah, but isn't it true you guys got the money to hire officers? You just can't get any officers because it's difficult.
No, it is. It's a nationwide thing. I mean, that's definitely clear. But it's even more impactful here in Richmond. It's harder to get officers to work here. There are other cities in the county that are, fully staffed, or in Sloan County, Fairfield is fully staffed. Or they might do down 1 or 2 positions, but not at the per capita rate that we do.
But you do have the money to hire officers, right?
Yes, we do. We have 20 vacancies. Sir.
The question I was going to ask is, it's kind of a catch-22 for the police because of the history of policing and in communities of color. There's always kind of been that, I think, because of the way policing has been done and been misused, it's kind of like the paradigm shifted. And so, for me, I kind of understand when people want less engagements with the police, because the less engagement you have, then the less chance of something bad happens. Now, I'm agreeing that I live in Richmond. I don't want people out on the street that are just going to do bad things. So I'm wholeheartedly behind that. But if there are tools like the camera readers, or the license plate readers, but I've also thought about, what do you call them, the red light cameras? Anything that's going to give you a for sure, like, you know what I'm saying, like that kind of just, you're catching fish. And so I'm saying, and it's less engaging. So when you go to deal with a situation, you're more for sure than kind of, you're going to run into, I messed up. And then it becomes something that's blown out of proportion, you know, because somebody had bad intentions.
Right. Well, look, there's a history of policing, and I think you always have to acknowledge that history. And I think, you know, in Richmond, we've come a long way. I'm not saying we're out of the woods and all that. You know, there's always issues and there's always improvements to be made. But I think you have to acknowledge the history, acknowledge problems in the past, so that you can move forward. But the only thing I would say about things like red light cameras and whatnot is police officers have a lot of discretion. The vast majority of people I stop, they leave with nothing. It's a conversation, hey, an education, etc. You get a red light. I mean, I'm just using your hypothetical a lot. I actually don't think red light cameras would be a good thing, and they're probably really, really expensive, I guess. But I'm not a city planner. But you're not going to get a break for that. And most of the people that I stop, it's a conversation, it's an education, and it's on your way. And that's again a cultural thing within the police department on how work is done. I don't know what it's like in Antioch or Walnut Creek, whatever, but I can say that that's how we operate here, of a kind of a procedural justice fashion of, hey, this is why we're doing this, or whatever. And there's some times. I mean, I had one, a few weeks ago. I stopped a guy, it was on his birthday, and he just didn't want to hear it. He blew a stop sign right in front of my police cruiser. Something had to be done, and I tried to give him at least 2 opportunities of, hey, just, you need to own and understand what you did. And he was hard-headed, and that wasn't happening. So, here's the gentle reminder that, you're accountable to, the legal system just like everybody else. Even though I was trying to make sure that you didn't get taken on your birthday, but you really wanted it. So, Mary, here's your present. You know what I'm saying? But like that, so that's the thing. Is the vast majority of police stops they go with like no jail. It's like, hey, this is what you're doing. Okay, all right, and be on your way. But you do have to acknowledge the history and understanding of where things have come and where they need to go first, because you can't just put your head in the sand and pretend like nothing ever happened. That's fair.
And the other reason why I bring up the red light cameras is because I think the citizens should have to pay if they're being irresponsible. But that's me. That's kind of my philosophy. Everybody's got to pay, and I don't think anybody is beyond having to pay if they're being irresponsible. Just like that guy who you gave a chance to. So.
Yep. Don?
Social media, just a few days ago, there was a little discussion about a recent DUI checkpoint. And I know that some people confuse DUI checkpoints, which specifically just look for drunk drivers or people under the influence. They confuse those with something Richmond used to have, where they would check for driver's licenses and insurance, where everybody that drove by a certain area was pulled over. Do we still have those, and we really have DUI? And the DUI, do they pull over everybody or just selected individuals?
No. So what we have now, these come from State of California OTS, Office of Traffic Safety grants, and they are essentially just grants for DUI checkpoints. So there's a numerical system that determines when people come through, it's not every single person is getting stopped. I think it was problematic for many reasons. That was happening just as I became a police officer here. So I want to recall a little bit, but that's not how we do it now. It's set up ahead of time. It's put forward in social media. I think they actually say where that's going to be at, and yet still, people come through the just at the, the fish thing, people come through, and there's still people who are drunk, who don't have insurance and licenses, and that gets dealt with appropriately. And people are given a lot of options, and even if people don't have their appropriate paperwork, people are still provided, unless they have a suspended license, to provide an opportunity to have someone come drive their car away, things like that.
Yeah, they're required to give 24-hour notice of the area, not the specific location, but of the area.
I think we give the location now.
Now, that's up to you, but just what was required. I used to work with the RPOA on taking photographs of some of these, again, about 10, 12 years ago. We had one right in front of the Veterans Hall on 23rd Street, and the only way that I could get out of there was to drive through it. Even though I was working for them, they still pulled me over, and I had to prove that I had my driver's license and insurance on there. But
What happened?
What?
What happened?
Well, I got my car back eventually. No, but one thing I found amusing, there was this young lady there. She finally just asked, "How long are you going to be here? This is my spot."
I don't know what to tell you about that.
No, it was amusing.
Yeah, the times have changed for that. That's what. Yeah, I think even if you're right, I guess you don't have to tell them. Just even if you say the general area, but bottom line is this thing is for safety. It's not to get on one aspect of the community or another. It's not to catch people. It's like we have an issue in Richmond, unfortunately, with traffic safety. That's why the state of California gave us such a large grant, because a sizable amount of people were dying on the streets, getting hit, run over by cars, crashing cars, on bikes, etc. And although it's not as bad as the gun violence, it's up there. And comparatively speaking, for other cities, it's significant. So anything we can do to mitigate that, even if it's just education, I think it's good. Yes, sir.
I was going to ask you, do you have that data? Because I remember when Chief Therriault made the presentation talking about there were close to 800 reckless driving events. Do you have the?
I don't have it on me personally, but I can tell you the person to email and ask for it. Absolutely, that's public data. That's our.
So I know we're running out of time, but I really wanted to find out what the Richmond Police Department's policy is on. I know you guys just had a big bust on sideshows. What the policy is regarding not sideshows, but donuts. Thank you.
Yeah.
What, you're asking a police officer about donuts?
I do.
Crazy. Exactly.
I can do it all the way too.
So what is the policy for sideshows and then the policy for donuts? Do you take a car away now, or?
All right, well, we start at the top. So you kill me with the PD thing. Again, every answer I'm giving you, I'm not a representative from the police department, but from the police officers union. So giving the police officer perspective. Donuts, we call them power circles. Don, we upgraded that. We uplifted it. It's not,
Good to know.
It's not a negative connotation. Something good for you. Are you asking what we think should be done, Arto, or
what's actually
being done?
Yeah.
What's actually being done is when there's a call for service or sideshows, we divert as many units in the city as we can to try to push those vehicles out of the area. We try to gather license plates. We try to stop cars. Sometimes, at least we're able to stop some of the cars. Lots of times people just drive off. We're not allowed to chase those cars, so we don't. But we try to get information so that we can go tow them, get a towing authority later to have their car towed. Again, it's usually we try to contain it and push them away from neighborhood areas, because that's when people show up, and I've heard everything from, it's a Bay Area cultural thing to this and that. Well, the bottom line is it's illegal activity. It's activity that's usually done in the late hours of the night when people are sleeping, trying to get their rest so they can get their job on, or two jobs, and whatever the case may be. And it disturbs the neighborhoods, and so we do our best to push it out. But sometimes we're tied up, we can't get to them. It just depends, but they're resource intensive, and that's what we try to do. We haven't been able, we have stop sticks. They're devices that we can put to deflate tires. We haven't had a deployment of those yet, because generally we're able to push them away with police cars that respond. Usually when the cops show up, everyone's like, party's over, let's leave. So that's why we try to get there as soon as possible with as many cars as possible.
Well, one last question, anybody?
I'm sorry. Since he brought up sideshows, we hear about this all over the place, where sometimes when they have sideshows, there's so many people there, and there are more people involved with the sideshow that are anti-police, of course. As the police show up, they start surrounding the police cars, they beat on the cars, they destroy the cars. Are we experiencing that kind of situation in Richmond?
We've had it a couple times. I mean, there's a few times that we've showed up and taken bottles, things like that. People throw stuff at us. I think there was one incident too when I was working last year where they ran up onto the police car and spray painted the car, that kind of thing. But I've watched cars try to take off and people crash into each other, and lo and behold, they had a gun in the car, so everyone went to jail. I mean, I've seen it all. So it's all kinds of nonsense, unfortunately.
Well, thank you for coming. I'd like to thank Therriault.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I'll stick around here if you want to ask me questions. I'll be here.
Again, he's a candidate for sheriff. If you want to talk to him about his campaign, he'll be outside. He was a candidate for county supervisor. And then Shasa, city manager, excuse me. Thank you for coming, and thank you all for coming. And you guys have a safe night and have a great weekend. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.